Hey Transplant Helper community, my name is Jim Merle, and today I was sitting down scrolling through some of my comments and I saw an actual question come up from one of my greatest viewers, someone who's a huge contributor to the program as far as they watch all the programs, they comment below, add to the discussion, that sort of thing. When I saw a question come up by one of my favorite people in the world, I decided just to stop what I was doing and sit down in front of the camera and answer that question, which wasn't that hard to decide. I was actually cleaning a bathroom, and who wants to do that? But anyway, I thought that this question would benefit many of us just to sit down and open up and talk about it and make some comparisons. And the basic question comes down to wanting to know the pros, the cons, the risk, and the benefits of having, on the one hand, either a dobutamine induced stress test, or on the other, going in the cath lab, having a more traditional angiogram, that sort of thing. Now, if you're not familiar with one or the other or both of those procedures, basically the dobutamine-induced stress test is generally done in kind of an echocardiogram type Doppler situation. That is where they take you in a dark room, pretty much pull your shirt off or whatever, grease your chest up real good, take a probe and go all around your chest, and through doing so, they can take some great images, very accurate images and measurements as far as the actual overall structure of the heart, the vessels, the arteries around it, some of the things that are going on with the valve. I mean, overall, there's a ton of information they can get from simply doing that test. Now, on the other hand, if you go into a cath lab and have an angiogram done, you're basically going to get a lot of the same information, maybe with the addition, depending on what you're having done, a left or right heart cath procedure, but with the addition of having not only those images, but also having some very accurate pressures in the heart as far as how your heart is functioning when it's put under different pressures. It really helps to really gauge even better, more than visually, but by real numbers as to whether or not there's any blockages in the heart. Of course, if you're in a cath lab situation, there's the potential there that if they find a blockage, they can either try to balloon that out or insert a stent while you're there. But what are the pros, the cons, the benefits, and the risks? Well, on the one hand, if you're having the echocardiogram type procedure, obviously with a dobutamine added to that, again, it's just a very uninvasive type of procedure. And with the exception of the dobutamine being introduced probably by an IV, you're really not going to have anything inserted into your body. It's totally done from the outside. All the images, all the pictures that are taken are done from the outside. It's really just no big deal, okay? It's nothing to worry about. Now, when they add the dobutamine to that through an IV type drip, obviously, there's an increased risk there. A little small risk of the point of entry type of infection thing, but that could go with any kind of stick or prick, even a blood draw. But there's also a little bit more risk added with the dobutamine itself. Now, if you're not familiar with dobutamine, dopamine, they're all kind of in a similar family. These are basically drugs that can definitely help you out when you're in need, but in this case, they're simply adding the drug in a pretty quick, higher dose to put your heart under some stress. And so while they're taking those measurements via that probe, they're actually watching the function of the heart to see how it acts or reacts to stressors. Now, sometimes this is actually done without this whole situation. They do it more on a treadmill type thing, but if you have that done, they're doing it with kind of an EKG and, just some things to, just to measure and watch your heart on a monitor. Not nearly as accurate because they don't get actual images from that. But in this situation, it can give them some great images. You can actually see that stress happening and try to determine that even though this heart may or may not be functioning well, with just at rest, what if it's stressed? Does the pressures drop? Do some of the constrictions or the dilation of the vessels change? A lot of information can be gained from that. Now, on the other hand of that, if you go into an angiogram type procedure, you're going into a little bit more of a high risk situation. Obviously, instead of just the IV, which you'll probably get an IV during that procedure anyway, but instead of just the IV, you're probably going to get a catheter inserted. Obviously, it's an angiogram through either the neck, the groin, or sometimes the wrist. Now, there's a lot of argument as to which one of those views are better, depending on whether it's left or right heart cath. They can do either or one or the other, but there's a lot more risk involved in that. Obviously, with a catheter being inserted, there's, again, that site of infection right there, or infection at the site that could occur. There's also the possibility always there that while passing the different wires and catheters and such up through those vessels, veins, and arteries, that something could be perforated or poked poke through. Of course, that's a risk there. There's always a risk of bleeding at the site. So you can already tell the risks are a lot higher on this side. But the benefits are that if they're in there in the cath lab doing these procedures, say, for example, they do find that blockage, they do find that narrowing spot or something, again, they can do kind of a stent or maybe a ballooning situation. They can actually make some minor repairs. I know for me, I had the transcatheter aortic valve replacement, which you don't just have all, just because you're in a cath lab, don't just stop and do that. But, through a scheduled procedure, that can be done. So there's actually a lot they can do over in the cath lab. Now, as far as the risk, I've already named them. The benefits are, however, that you get a ton of information. You get similar images, not the same, but similar images. Generally, you may not even realize it, but they're kind of running it looks like an x-ray machine. It's much more than that, but they're kind of running an x-ray machine around overhead. And a lot of times you see the monitors over here on the wall. And they're getting some good imagery there by introducing the dyes, possibly even in the cath lab, introducing that same drug, that dobutamine. They could actually be measuring a lot of stuff, okay, with that added benefit of being able to perform any procedure that you need possibly during that same period of time. So would I rather go through the echocardiogram, dobutamine stress test, or the cath lab? It's almost a no-brainer. I'd rather go through this stress test over here. Now, again, I don't like doing treadmills. I've had a bad experience on a treadmill. I'm not doing a treadmill. But as far as the echocardiogram type with just a probe, yeah, I'd rather go through that, provided I can be pretty confident that there's some good medical staff at hand, kind of watching the procedure more than just a technician. At my transplant center, for example, we've got doctors that are monitoring those things kind of behind, closed doors. And so there's always someone there if something kind of goes wrong. And, again, there's a potential. Dobutamine is a pretty potent drug, and there can be some arrhythmias that are introduced there that maybe are hard to get out of. But that risk exists in the cath lab as well, don't get me wrong. But here in this situation, they can't do as much about it. So I would probably still rather choose this. And I think in the situation with this particular person, your situation better than I am if you're watching. But, what it comes down to is the team has changed out. There's been some staff turnover. One doctor prefers to be in the cath lab versus here. And, of course, that's a matter of opinion for the doctors. I would definitely sit down and discuss that with them. Let them tell you the risk and the benefits, especially on the benefit side. Why do they think this procedure is going to be better for them? Give them more information. And if you're having some kind of trouble, it could very well be for that reason. It may be because they've decided that, we're going to go into the cath lab here and do it over here because we can, do a little maintenance while we're there if we have to. Now, with that being said, the only thing I would like to add to this discussion is basically just mentioning here that, again, everything you need to be discussing with your doctor, I'm happy to answer, and I'm glad to answer this. I hope this has helped a little bit of our understanding about it. But really, just can constantly remind ourselves that I think the doctors are probably looking out for our best interest overall. Let me say that again. However, just to drop a bug in your ear, they can make a whole lot more money in that cath lab than they can ever make in the echocardiogram type of situation. So just curious about that. Nonetheless, hope this answer has helped you out just a little bit to kind of consider both. Again, some risk to both. I think the higher risk is in the cath lab, however, but you got to make your own choice along with your team. So for all of you who are watching the program today, I just want to remind you that I'm constantly putting out the, materials, hopefully every week, that can benefit you. And I'm constantly scrolling those comments looking for questions, ideas, and thoughts. So if you got any of those questions, ideas, or thoughts, add them in the comments below. Give me a big thumbs up on this video. It really helps YouTube to understand that you're enjoying these videos, and then be willing to share this out, maybe in some of the groups or communities that you are a member of. But until next time, thank you so much for the question. Thank you so much for watching. Stay stronger, friends.